Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Let's get rolling. I wanted to talk about the subject of animism in the context of Maoism, Third Worldism. I have not heard anybody discuss it, but in my opinion, it is an important subject, and it is one which should be discussed and understood. Now, animism is a very common belief system in many um, primitive societies, Aboriginal societies, many tribal societies, even societies which have adopted, for example, Roman Catholicism or a particular branch of Protestantism. They will often hold on to a certain kind of animism. Even in voodoo, for example, there are elements of animism. Now, in case you don't know what animism is, and I realize not everyone does, I am a sociologist of religion, so I do, but I can't assume other people necessarily know what I know, just like you cannot assume that I know what you know. Um, Animism is based on the idea that everything has a spiritual essence, a spiritual core, that the heart of everything that exists, whether it is what we would call living or not living, so even minerals, even atoms have a spiritual core, and that spiritual core is alive. It has life to it on some level, whether we can understand it or not. There is some life that exists in everything. In other words, life pervades the universe. There is nothing in that sense which is not alive in some sense. Life is universal. Now, that doesn't mean that life will necessarily look like us. I mean, dogs don't look like cats. Cats don't look like mice. Mice don't look like tigers, and so on. We may look a bit like monkeys because we are all part of the great apes, but there are still significant differences between monkeys and Homo sapiens sapiens, which is specifically what we are, Homo sapiens sapiens. We are probably most familiar with ourselves, so I will begin by talking about us. First, let me explain why I look the way I do. No, I did not get into a fight. Um, I do have a concussion. I slipped on a plastic bag a couple of days ago and landed on my chin. And at first I was confused. I said, well, if I landed on my chin, then why is my forehead bleeding? Why is my nose bleeding? Which it was. It took me quite a while to clean everything up after I had finished putting bandages on myself. It was a real mess. Um, the reason why I can bleed, the reason why I can have concussions, no fun, but it reminds me that I am a living being. The kind of life that I have, the carbon-based substance which makes up Mark Foster, that is my life. But beneath that carbon-based substance, there is even a deeper life. Some people call it the human spirit. Aristotle called it the rational soul. Whatever name we want to give it, there is a spiritual essence which I have, which you have. In fact, what I would say is that we both share the same spiritual essence. I don't have a rational soul that is apart from yours. All human beings have a single rational soul. All dogs have a single animal spirit. All minerals have a single mineral spirit. All vegetables have a single vegetable spirit. When we rise to a high level of developing spiritual qualities, if we make the choice to go in that direction, then we can move in the direction of having the spirit of faith. Likewise, there is only one spirit of faith. That is the highest level that we as human beings can attain. The rational soul, the human spirit, is a given that gives us the power of thought, that gives us the power of imagination, that gives us the power of free will. Those are aspects of the human spirit or the rational soul. And again, in my view, there is only one of them, not multiple rational souls or human spirits. Likewise, there is only one spirit of faith, and we can share in that as well. We develop the spirit of faith by developing a spiritual life, by turning within, because spirit always lies within. And that is the heart of animism. To an animist, everything is essence. It is the essence of a thing or a being, which contains a portion of that spirit, or which is a vehicle through which a spirit can manifest itself. And that is how we can distinguish a vegetable from an animal, from a human, from a mineral. They all have different types of spirit, different types of spiritual essence, which is really what spirit is. In many parts of the world, what I just said is assumed. It is not novel. It is not something that people have to be told. People learn this from the time that they are very young. Toddlers learn that there is this kind of essence, this kind of spirit, which pervades everything and which in different types exists in different categories of beings and things. The mineral spirit, the vegetable spirit, the animal spirit, the spirit of faith, and the human spirit. And so we all, as living entities, as human beings, we are defined by the fact that we share that one human spirit. I do not have a different human spirit than you do. I do not have a different spirit of faith than you do. The spirit of faith refers to the virtues, the spiritual qualities that I can develop as I move on the path of understanding this concept of spiritual essence. So that is animism. And I think that we really should all be animists. Animism is something that can be used, I believe, in reaching out especially to people in many indigenous parts of the world, many fourth world societies, because people in those parts of the world simply assume that there is this spirit, there is this spiritual essence which exists. They don't need to be convinced of it. They are surprised in many cases when they meet an outsider, typically somebody from the first world, a Westerner, who does not recognize that, who may even find the notion of a spirit to be amusing, to be primitive. But to the contrary, it is these people, these indigenous people, who have that knowledge that we all should have, that knowledge that we all share the same spirit. And that is ultimately what makes us one. And so we are literally one thing. There is only one humanity, not two. I am not a different humanity than you are. I am a different Homo sapiens sapien than you are, but I am not a different humanity. We are all a part of the same humanity. That humanity is shared, that humanity is cultivated through our own efforts, through the processes that we engage in to promote the development of the spirit of faith and the human spirit in ourselves. And so, when we go out and engage in conscientization, critical conscience, and consciousness raising, if we are not aware of this concept of animism, this universal spirit that to many indigenous people we have, then our ability to communicate effectively will be extremely limited. It is very likely that they will not pay attention to us, that they will not take us seriously. I feel that way about myself now, after having injured myself, having given myself this concussion, slipping on a plastic bag. What a foolish thing to do. Well, I guess I'm a klutz. I am a klutz. Been a klutz my entire life, and that's not going to change likely. But if we are aware of this spirit that we share with each other, then when somebody sees me and they see the fact that I have these bandages on me, one bandage here on my forehead, another bandage here on my nose, then they will likely ask, my goodness, are you okay? Are you okay? Is everything all right? Is there anything that I can do to help you? It is important, I think, that from a Maoist third worldist perspective, we recognize that what I said is how much of the world, especially the indigenous world, people in that indigenous world think. They assume that that is true. They assume that there is this spirit that pervades all human beings, and that there is spirit in these lower levels of being as well, including minerals. The reason why, for example, and I'm not a Jain, but the reason why Jains are Jains, if, as you might know, practice an extreme form of what in Sanskrit is called ahimsa. Ahimsa is nonviolence. And I had a friend, he's now deceased. He was unfortunately a drug addict, and he ended up killing himself, sadly, overdosing on drugs. I tried to warn him, but he wouldn't listen to me or to anyone else. But Vinny, which was his name, had a dentist, and his dentist was a Jain. And Vinny told me that he had a conversation one time with his dentist, and it sounded odd to me because it's not something that I am familiar with. His dentist said, again, his dentist is a Jain, the Jain religion of India. She has a termite infestation. Now, if I had a termite infestation, the first thing I would do is to call an exterminator. I would not think twice about it. That is what I would do without even considering it. I would not give it a second thought, but she did. Because to her, those termites also have spirit. They have what I guess I would call animal spirit. And so to many Janes, a termite now might in some future life become a human being. But even a termite in its present life is an actual entity with spirit. And so killing a termite is not much different than killing a human being. The concept of murder being an exclusive thing to human beings, the way most people think about it in this part of the world, is not the way Jains look at it. To Jains, everything, including minerals, everything is alive. Everything has the breath of life in it. And we should make that assumption when we are dealing with many indigenous peoples. Because, again, if we don't, our ability to practice conscientization, our ability to elevate the consciousness of people as little as we can, not to assume that we have any special abilities, not to place ourselves on a pedestal where we can lecture people and convince them of our own particular points of view, but to have a good conversation with people where I can share with people what I believe in. I can share Maoism, third worldism with the people that I meet. I can share critical realism with the people I meet. But if I am unaware of this notion of spirit, this universal spirit, which pervades each of the different levels or kingdoms of existence, including our own, then my ability to relate to them is going to be extraordinarily limited. And thus, however much I may want to bring about transformation in the world, however much I may see the capitalist world system falling apart all around me, which it is, that is a given. But communism, a communist or socialist world system, is not a given. It is not a given. It is something that we, as human beings, need to do for ourselves. Socialism or communism is without any guarantees. There is no guarantee that after the capitalist world system collapses, and it will collapse, it will collapse because it is collapsing right now all around us. Read the papers, watch newscasts, go to YouTube, watch videos, and you can see what's happening right now to global capitalism. It is not in a very solid or steady condition. It is very unstable, I should say. And so because of that, we have to recognize that capitalism will not be around forever, but what will replace it if we have not done our job, namely in spreading the ideas, the concepts of communism, of Maoism, third worldism, spreading the good news, in a sense, I guess you could say the gospel of Maoism, third worldism, that there is some light at the end of the tunnel if we look for it, if we want to turn ourselves in that direction. But again, maybe we won't. There is a very good chance that we won't. My favorite philosopher, Roy Bhaskar, the founder of critical realism, was very pessimistic about the future. He did not believe that there was a very good chance that we, as human beings, would survive. And I think that should be evident to everyone Sadly, it is easy to get caught up in denial. We are so used to living. We are so used to being in a condition where we expect tomorrow to be just like today. I remember 9/11, the day before 9/11 and the day of 9/11. They were two entirely different days. My experience on one day and my experience on the next day had nothing at all in common with each other. And so things can change like that. We have no way of knowing. We are not given a warranty that things will work out for us. And so it is very possible that we may end up in a situation where capitalism is gone, but we have nothing that is good that can replace it. And so even though I, as a first worlder, I do not think that I can create revolutions or I can participate directly in revolutions here in the first world. I can engage in disruption to a certain extent. I can try to challenge existing centers of power to some extent, but that's about it. I can try to educate people as little as I know, to inform them about what I think is important, but that's all. I have no ability to transform the world on my own. For that matter, neither do people in the third world. Neither do people in the fourth world. And it is for that reason why nothing can be guaranteed. Although the potential for revolution may be greater in the third world and the fourth world than it is here in the first world, that does not mean that there will be revolutions in the third and fourth worlds. It only means that they have a better shot. But Roy Bhaskar did not think there was a very good chance of it. He thought the odds were that we would end up destroying ourselves. And some days I feel that way too. I feel that way today. In fact, I guess I'm in a very pessimistic mood right now. Maybe part of it is the concussion that I had, but I'm in a very pessimistic mood at this moment. I genuinely do not have much hope that we will see a good tomorrow. I do anticipate the capitalist world system collapsing at any time, but whether it will be replaced with something better, I have no idea. It may very well be replaced with something much worse. And so it is our job as human beings to disrupt existing systems, to challenge hierarchies of power, where we see people being abused, where we see people being tormented, where we see people being sexually harassed. We need to stand up for them, to defend the helpless. Because if we don't do it, if I don't do it as a Maoist third worldist, then how can I expect anyone else to do it for me? I can't. And so I need to be on my guard that I am doing my part, that I am working toward something better in the future by engaging in disruption, by engaging in conscientization, but I can't be sure that it will be productive. There is literally no way to know. And when I read the headlines every day, when I see that there might be any day a war between the United States and Iran, for example, which seems to be what Bibi Netanyahu wants, so Netanyahu can continue fighting the West Bank, Gaza, and Lebanon. He really does not have the power to fight Iran. Israel does have nuclear weapons, but most likely their nukes are not strong enough to penetrate deeply enough into the ground to destroy the nuclear weapons silos. But the United States can do that. And so that apparently is what Benjamin Netanyahu wants. He wants to drag the United States into a war. And it seems, sadly, to me, that Joseph Biden is all too willing to do what Bibi Netanyahu wants. He does not seem to be hesitant at all. He has no sense of remorse. Imagine what would happen to Iran if the United States launched a nuclear assault on that country. Imagine. Iran has more in common with France than it does with Iraq. Iran is a modern country. It's not first world, but it is modern. It is a very developed country on its own level, not quite to the level of being first world, but that's basically a technicality. It is a very developed country on its own level. And if we go in and we try to destroy that entire country, if we try to wreck the nuclear facilities that exist in that country, what will happen? What will happen to the United States? What will happen to Israel? Hezbollah has shown that it has a better capacity to penetrate the Israeli Iron Dome given to it by former President Trump than Iran does. And if that is true, and I have no way of knowing whether it is true or not, then Hezbollah might successfully, perhaps, launch nuclear weapons into Israel, while the United States launches nuclear weapons into Iran. And then, where will we be? I probably don't need to answer that question, but I will. It seems to me that we will be at a place somewhat comparable to what people generally call World War III. I know I do not want to see that. That is not the kind of world I want to live in. I don't want to see so many innocents suffer. The people in Gaza are suffering enough as it is. The people in the West Bank, likewise. The people in Lebanon, likewise. And why? Due to a pure accident of birth. They happen to be born in those places. They could just as easily have been born in Israel or in the United States. And in that case, they would not be suffering as much as they are right now, but they weren't. And so their prospects at this moment in time do not look very good. And that is what I care about. I care about the people of the third world. I care about the people of the fourth world. Do I care about the people of the first world? To an extent, but not quite as much, maybe not that much at all. When I see what we in the first world have been doing to the third world and the fourth world, it is hard for me to care that much. That's not to say I wish any harm on anybody. I don't. But caring is something else. Caring is an emotional sense. Do I have that emotional sensibility when it comes to the US or Israel? I can't say I do. I can't say I do. I do have it when it comes to Lebanon, when it comes to Gaza, when it comes to the West Bank, when it comes to Iran. Those are places which I think need to be protected, but they may not be, and we may soon see tremendous suffering, tremendous disasters in that part of the world. And if I had the ability to stop it, as I was just talking with my neighbor about a short time ago, I would. If I had the ability to protect people living in those countries, from the possible assault of the U.S., Israel, and maybe other countries as well. Would I do it? You bet. You bet I would, but I don't. I have no ability to do anything. I'm an old, retired college sociology professor with no real power at all. And so I just sit like everyone else and watch and read and listen and try to see where things are going. But really, I have no way of knowing what will happen tomorrow or even 10 minutes from now. I can't do that. And that is the fear that I have right now. I wish that I knew, because I think that if I knew, maybe I could take some action, but I don't. And so nothing that I know of can be done by me. And that is to me the greatest tragedy of my life, that I see so much suffering, and I would like to alleviate it, but I have no idea of how to do that. For the time being, this has been Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Metarealism. We are booned. We are booned. We are booned. Goodbye.